Quiet on set. Picture is up. All right, roll sound.
Rolling.
Roll cameras.
Cam's rolling.
And 3, 2.
Hey everybody, what's going on? And welcome to Hank's Think Tank. It's been a little while since I've been in here, but I'm a busy guy. I got a lot going on. Today I have Stephan Grot in, and he is the executive director of the Surls Locke Museum. Now we've had Mr. and Miss Surls, and Mr. Surls and Miss Locke in here before discussing this museum. It was a while back. But this is actually going to be a really, really nice facility. And believe it or not, it's going to be right here in Splendora, Texas. I believe it was set for 20 acres, right?
It was set for 20 acres, but since then we've grown to 40 acres.
Wow. Okay. And this is going to be amazing. I'm going to put some links in the description that'll take you to some of the artwork that these individuals have done. Amazing stuff. Beautiful stuff. But I want to welcome aboard Stephan. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Hank. Thanks for having me. I'm doing well. Thank you.
Good to see you. You came in from Omaha, right?
That's right.
Did you fly in last night?
Flew in last night. It was nice and smooth.
Wow. Well, that's good. Yeah, because landings in Houston aren't always great.
Yeah, well,
so it depends on the cold fronts, I believe.
They like to bank and maybe do a barrel roll every once in a while.
Yeah, there you go. So tell me about executive director of the museum and what all that entails and
you bet.
Where we're at so far. Because last time we talked, it was maybe 6 months ago, and I know that everything was in the planning stage at that point. But where have we gone since then?
That's right. So when James came on, that was very close to the beginning of my time with them.
Okay.
I had been with them for a couple of months. Now, that doesn't mean that I didn't know James and Charmaine well before that. That was my first visit to Splendora, and so I really got a lay of the land, took a walk around, and got to know that space, which was really important for a lot of reasons. We really needed to understand the basics of what this museum could be. Going back quite a ways, James and Charmaine have been in Splendora for over 50 years, and I'm sure that they've told that story. But they've had an awful lot of experience around here, and they have almost 200 acres of forested land very close to your studio. Now, with regards to what they had been planning, it's gone through a lot of different iterations. They have a couple of pretty significant structures on their land already. They have a 12,000 square foot barn, essentially, that holds a lot of their work. And they also have a 2,000 square foot very nice gallery space that is right next to that. And those were kind of the first ideas of what the studio space could be, which I think has been close to 35 years now on the property. And this gallery space, which was what they thought they wanted to do, but their ideas just kept getting bigger and bigger. So they found me in Omaha, Nebraska, when I was hosting a party for them. And my former employer, June Kaneko, who's a large-scale ceramic artist, they were both getting the Lifetime Achievement Award from the International Sculpture Center. And if you don't know what that is, the ISC, the International Sculpture Center, they're based in New Jersey, and they are kind of the foremost authority on sculpture, up-and-coming artists. They have programs all over the country, all over the world. I mean, it's in the name.
It's a big deal.
Yeah,
it's a big deal.
They have one of the nicest sculpture parks in the world, really. It's called Grounds for Sculpture over in New Jersey. And Johanna Hutchinson, the executive director there, and I put on a party at the museum that I was the executive director of. It's called Kaneko. We threw a great big party for both of them. James got up on stage and told a story about Splendora and growing up in the forests of East Texas and living with the love of his life. And
he's a good storyteller.
Oh my
gosh. Really is.
I wish I could tell stories. Maybe in another 40 years I'll be as good of a storyteller as him.
There you go.
But he talked about his 7 daughters. And the moment he mentioned the 7 daughters, the whole entire crowd, it was about 350 people, every one of them just like gasped and fell in love with them right at that moment.
Yeah, can't help it.
We got to talking, and I was in charge of the renovation and the placement of a sculpture park in a place called the Jean Leahy Mall. It's kind of Omaha's Central Park.
Okay.
And along there's a pathway where we had several sculptures that I was in charge of placing. We needed to go find some great sculptors, and I only had a year to do it. They kind of came to me because we specialize in sculpture, because Jun Kaneko, who's our founder, he makes big art. This is the biggest ceramic art that's ever created in history. So we just kind of know how to get big things and move them very quickly and easily, and we know an awful lot of artists. So Johanna from the ISC and myself and a few other people, we found some folks. And when I met James, I loved him. I loved his artwork. And he was one of the first people that we asked to be a part of this park. And as a deal that came along with the placement of that artwork, we got to do a great big show. So we had James up for one of his biggest shows that he's ever had in his life. He took up about 16,000 square feet of our space. We have 30,000. That's a lot. It's a big space. We have about a city block downtown in Omaha.
Wow.
We had. I'm no longer affiliated with the Kaneko, but I still love it, and I still refer to it as mine because I've worked with them for about 22 years.
Sure. Yeah.
That show took a couple of years for us to formulate and plan and put together. And James and Charmaine were by far my team's favorite people to work with. I mean, they're just lovely people.
Interesting people.
They're very interesting, but they're just really big deals. I mean, they have a reach that goes all over the country and all over the world. I mean, James especially has a reputation that really just can't be overblown with regards to what I would say is a relatively modest lifestyle down here in Splendora and up in Texas or up in Colorado. He's got a place. They just live their life and love to kind of do their own thing. But when it comes down to it, he's one of the biggest deals in sculpture in the world right now.
Wow.
So after I left Kaneko for personal reasons, James gave me a call and asked me to be the executive director of this new project, which is very different than what my old job was. When I came in, I was as the executive director of Kaneko. It had already been founded, put together, and going on programming for about 10 years.
So it was on the ground. It was already built.
It was already built.
Okay.
I was a part of the building and fundraising and doing all sorts of things, but I was pretty young at that time, and was really just running things around, taking people's coats, pouring drinks, and just making sure that things are happening, right? Which is actually really good training.
Sure.
I also managed Jun Kaneko's archives, which is essentially scanning all of their images, putting in all of their information, and making sure that their life story, all of their photographs, everything that kind of goes with the process of what a major artist's lifestyle entails. I was recording all of that and putting it in such a way to where it becomes kind of a database, a searchable database. And that's kind of an unsung hero with regards to the importance of maintaining an artist's legacy as you go forward.
Sure, yeah.
So when I came on to the Kaneko, it was, it was like hit the ground running. You've got an event next week. You've got to fundraise $2 million a year. You've got to, by the way, there's a collection building that we want you to build, and it's going to cost about $25 million. So can you do that? And I said, probably, but
we need to hear from you by Friday.
Let me put my bag down and then I'll get started. So this is pretty different. This is from scratch. Even with James and Charmaine having thought about this for several decades, when we got down to the details of it, we really needed to stop and go back to the drawing board and say, okay, well, not only where does it go, how big do we want it, what's the subject matter? It's called the Surls Locke Museum, but when it really comes down to it, they don't want it just to be their show. They're important enough to be able to make a museum just about themselves, but they really want to honor the legacy of their community and kind of the Texas heritage that has brought up their lifestyle and has been their influence their whole entire life. And so
that's awesome.
Yeah, well, I think it's very appropriate for who they are. I've met a lot of artists, and in order to be an artist, it's almost a necessary criteria for you to be the cockiest person in the room.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
James and Charmaine are not those people. They've got big personalities. They they love to get attention. They love big stories, but they are just the most humble, kind, welcoming people that you can imagine. And so it's really interesting to get to hear what their intentions are, because they are just as much about, if not more, about the community and honoring the legacy of early Texas art and getting opportunities for contemporary artists, up-and-coming artists, established artists to be able to have a chance to show in their museum.
And being that this is in the development stages, I just wonder, because, like, if I were putting together something like this, my view of it would be more mechanical and scientific. And, okay, we have to make this work. We're going to have restrooms here. And I wonder if James sees this as just a larger piece of art.
Well,
and I bet he does.
He does. Absolutely. It's funny because I would say that my role is taking on the more like operational, scientific, logical thinking of it. I mean, they're very logical thinkers. And when it comes down to it, they do think about, how many bathrooms that you need to have. But when it really, when they dream about it, this is this is a curated land for them, right?
Awesome.
This is something that they want to have to where when you walk in it, walk through it, walk around it, it's inspiring in every place. And the only way that you can do that is if you really consider it a big piece of art. And so it's fun to get to dream along with them. Yeah. And then I have to kind of turn around and say, okay, well, how many bathrooms do we need for that? It's
how many parking spaces?
Yeah. Oh man. I mean, parking in and of itself is a funny thing. I wish it just didn't exist, but obviously it's a necessary evil.
Sure.
But we have a great board that we've put together. Just we have one local. Her name's Catherine Person. She's on the East Montgomery County Improvement District.
Correct. Yeah.
She also used to be the president of the Lone Star College system.
And one of my favorite people.
And she's amazing.
She is. Yeah.
She was. We had BB Moncrief and Billy Hassel. BB is lives up in Fort Worth, and she and Billy have been partners for quite a while. She's an accountant and comes from a financial background. Billy is a very well-known painter in his own right. So they were a really great set of people to kind of get us started. We had an artist with an outside perspective, with kind of a Texas perspective, and those two were able to invest in us such that we can really get the ball rolling. They were the ones who really tipped the scales to say, okay, this can be a real thing. We can hire somebody on me. And
well-rounded group. Sounds great.
Yes. And we brought on Catherine right away, and she really has all the answers when you think about kind of like, okay, let's talk about this from a civic responsibility perspective. What is the infrastructure needs? What's everybody else doing around here such that we can kind of, get in with the plan and make sure that we're making all of the best decisions possible for the community. And that coincidentally is actually what we're doing today. That's why I'm here right now. We have a number of leaders of chambers of commerce. We have some of the MSED board, a few other improvement districts around here, some mayors that are coming in, a lot of community leaders, business owners, and we're just presenting the project from a very face value perspective to just say, here's our plan. We'd love it if we could be incorporated into your plan. And Catherine has been the force behind that. She's the one who's introduced me to all of those folks, and we have about 40, 50 people coming this afternoon.
Wow. And where's this going to be?
In James's studio, so in the big barn, as we call it. And it's a perfect example to be able to give people a scope of what his artwork, what her artwork looks like, how big it is, what kind of spaces we need. And honestly, that room is something we can point at and say, this is one room of a larger scale project that we want to be able to do. And so you can see that even just with a fraction of the inventory of this permanent collection that we're going to have, it requires a lot of space.
So the museum, will it be mainly indoors, or will it be a combination of indoor spaces and outdoor spaces? How's that going to work?
Great question. Okay, so there's four main categories that we're dealing with. And in answer to your question really quickly, there is going to be a large building or buildings. We kind of have a couple of different iterations of the floor plan right now, and one of it is one big building and one of it is a few.
Okay.
But they'll all be proximal to each other. And then that is going to be about 30,000 square feet of space.
That's huge.
That's a big space. But it's really not quite as big as what you think of when you really think about all the things that you need. And we're talking about that's storage, that's staging, workshops, plus galleries, bathrooms, atrium, etc. So once you start to kind of like parcel that out, it really doesn't amount to that much space for any one subject matter. But it's a big building. So that big building or buildings is going to go on what we first anticipated being 20 acres. James and Charmaine then went back to really thinking about what do they want to leave as a legacy. And so they doubled that, and they're going to be donating 40 acres of their property that they have over in Splendora. Now they have about 185 acres of beautiful forest, and we're going to get the northeast corner of that. And so the 40 acres will be surrounded by another, say, 130 acres, 130 or 145 acres. I hate doing math on the spot. And that 145 acres will be not only kind of a natural buffer, but will eventually be more different versions of what their family has dreamed of being able to do. And what that is can take on a lot of different iterations. But right now they have a daughter that lives on the property right next to the studio. She grows gardens. She specializes in kind of local planting. And is very interested in kind of scaling that up. And so we've got ideas of being able to partner with the family in different ways to be able to program, a kind of natural services, nature hikes, maybe farm to table catering, things like that.
I like it.
That's all very far into the future, and it's a lot of just kind of big ideas that maybe we can grab from. But the resources are there, and we're very lucky to have 40 acres. I mean, that most museums have an average of 5 to 10 acres that they get to build on and have a sculpture garden around, if they have a sculpture garden, if they're lucky enough to get to have a sculpture garden. Most urban museums, you get whatever that building's going to allow you to have, and maybe you can set a sculpture outside, and then all the rest of it is inside. The rest of these 40 acres are going to be sculpture park, sculpture walks. And right now, just to kind of start small, we are anticipating about 2 miles of pathway that we want to weave throughout the forest. And that might sound like a lot. That might not sound like a lot, depending on...
2 miles is significant.
It is.
That's great.
When you think about like needing to start from scratch, cut those pathways, pave some of those most of those pathways, and make it such that there's maybe a sculpture every few hundred yards. That's a pretty significant investment.
Absolutely.
So we've got a few plans that we want to be able to do to be able to make this possible, and obviously that requires a lot of fundraising. But James and Charmaine are giving several hundred pieces of their work, of their life's work, to this permanent collection. It's about $12 million in value right now.
Sure.
Now that's going to grow, but right now, some of those pieces are ready to go outside. Some of those pieces are ready to be put into our inventory. We're not going to pull the trigger on what that collection looks like just yet. We have a tentative list, as they always start out that way. Unless an artist has willed their artwork to say, okay, I've now sectioned my artwork off to where this is what I'm going to sell or keep for my family, and this is what is going to go into some sort of foundation or museum. Right now, because they're living, working artists. I mean, James is making artwork literally every day. He is making a huge body of work up in Colorado right now. It's
going to be fun. It's got to be.
I can't believe that I get to do this job, honestly.
I know, that's amazing.
I mean, you're working with wonderful people, creative talents, but getting to see creation happen all the time and be a part of, okay, this is a new concept. how does that change what our plan is? Does it change what our plan is? Do we need more room, or can we stick to the plan and really just start to incorporate this? And I think we've got a really good plan right now with regards to kind of housing all of this and making sure that it's cared and maintained for. And I'm very, very excited about the sculpture garden in and of itself, because that allows us space to do things that most other art institutions just can't do for a lot of different reasons.
Wow. So will there be a fee? Like if I wanted to visit this museum, would I pay an entry fee, or how does that work?
That's an excellent question.
Because, I mean, there's going to be some costs. I mean, you're going to have electricity and maintenance and water and sewage.
No, that's all free, right?
No.
No. So,
and I would think that those costs in some cases could be relatively high.
very much so. Yeah. So that is the unsexy fact of all museums. You know, when people are fundraising and needing to get money, they oftentimes are fundraising for a big project that's got somebody's name attached to it. It's got a theme attached to it. It's lots of fun. But honestly, the money that you raise, if you do it right, half of that money, if not more, is just going towards keeping the lights on,
right?
Keeping your staff employed. And that's the fact of the matter is that's the thing that I need to worry about all the time. So with regards to the admission fee, admission is something that this is kind of a secret, but most museums, all museums, if they're responsible, actually do have an admission fee. If it's free, it's because somebody has, through the goodness of their heart or through a mission of their foundation, has paid for that admission for their community.
Right.
And so that's a really important thing for people just to keep in mind when they visit any museum and they have free entry. That entry is not actually free.
Still covered by a foundation.
That's
somewhere.
Right. It's taken care of by somebody. And so look for a sign when you see that, because that's a pretty significant cost. It's usually hundreds of thousands of dollars that that somebody is helping taking care of so that the community can get in there anytime they want to.
Wow.
And that is our intention. So when I ran Kaneko, our museum was always free. Sometimes we'd have a special event. You know, there'd be a book tour coming through or a major speaker coming through, and then you'd charge a ticket for that. But with regards to just general everyday access, all of that was free. And my intention is to do the same. So, you know, there are several foundations, both locally and nationally, that we can talk to and have that taken care of. And so let's say it's going to be $10 to get in. You start to anticipate how many people are going to be coming in. You give them an estimate to say, hey, you know, we think that, 10,000 people are going to be coming through. Okay, we need $100,000 to be able to admit everybody for free, right? And you track all of that to say, okay, what was that too much? Was that too little?
Right.
And oftentimes these foundations, they care about that. And if you say, hey, we had twice as many people as what we thought come through the door, they said, that's great. We'll give you twice as much. I mean, the foundations around here are people just don't realize how much foundations around here do for their community. I mean, you see these names on buildings, over top of doorways and things like that. And you just say, oh, that's nice. Somebody got their name on there.
Yeah.
But they're really making these things happen.
That's great. And so we have a projected opening date of 2030, correct?
That's right. That's our goal. So year one is really just kind of going back to the drawing board, figuring out all the details. We've just started fundraising, so we're about 8-9 months in. We are starting an ambassador program, and what that means is we want to have all of Texas, because we are a Texas Arts Museum.
Okay.
We want to have all of Texas kind of claim us as their museum. I know there's lots of museums, there's lots of art institutions, but we at least want folks from all around Texas to care about this, because James and Charmaine have been raised by people all over Texas, and they've lived all over Texas. And so they want to make sure that is kind of a part of our ethos. And so this ambassador program, as far as my strategy is concerned, is we want to have folks from all over Texas, and especially around the greater Houston area and Splendora, et cetera, to kind of sign up as an ambassador. And what we ask people to do is essentially throw us a party for the folks that they think would be interested in helping us out in some way, shape, or form. That could be volunteers, potential pool of volunteers and docents. That could be people who could help run our programs, and also people who are going to help fundraise for us. I did this back in my Coneco days, and it was a very successful project because it's not asking people to kind of jump in head first and give us all sorts of time and money and resources, right? It's a way of really just saying, hey, we're excited about this project too. We want to introduce you to other people who could potentially be excited about this, and really just kind of grow the network of people who can be excited about this. And whoever can help in a certain way, we'll give them lots of different ways to help.
That's awesome. I like it. That's a great idea.
And if anybody is interested, that's online. They can read about what the ambassador program is, but that's basically what it is. We just ask you to host a party for us. We help you coordinate it. And usually what our goal is to have a couple more people at that party say, we'll throw a party for you too.
Yeah. So y'all get to party a lot, I guess.
Yeah, I say party, and they are parties, but when it really comes down to it, if you're an event planner, or if you're somebody who like runs events and does parties, like it's work too. But
sure,
I'm not going to pretend that it's terrible work. It's actually really fun work.
It is.
Absolutely,
that's for sure.
I love meeting people. I love making friends, and so this is a good job for me.
Well, sounds like it. This is a big deal for East County. It's a big deal for Splendora too.
Oh yeah.
So I think that this is actually amazing, and I'm thrown that something like this would even be here. I'm so used to this just being forest, so.
Well, and that is something that we want to make sure is maintained too. James and Charmaine are adamant about the planning process and what we do to construct this such that it is doing as little as possible to disrupt the natural setting that's around them. I mean, they've grown up in this forest for 50 plus years. They're not about to knock it all down. They want to make it so that this museum is honoring the surroundings and the environment that it's based off of. I mean, it's literally the materials and the inspiration for everything that they've done in their life. And so this museum truly is kind of a monument to this place, to Splendora, to East Texas.
Yeah. Amazing. So out of the 193, I think you said, acres that they have? Is it
185.
185, okay. So are they going to plant this pretty much in the center of that? My concerns would be if it was to one side or the other, you may have heavy industry parked there next to it, and that would be a nightmare.
Well, part of our strategy, like I said, we have a group of people coming in today that we're going to be talking about what their plan is. Because we have 5 or so years to be able to figure out, to build this. That means we've got 4 or 5 years before we break ground. And we want to take very careful study of not only what is going to be happening from a development perspective around us, but also from an environmental perspective. Obviously, there's a lot of floods. There's some hurricanes that roll through here every once in a while. We're looking at a couple of places. One of the first things that we looked at was a topographic map of the space, and we've identified a couple of high grounds. And then it comes down to, okay, well, what is going to be a way that even if there is something that is going to be difficult for us to look at right across the street, how deep in do we need to go? The 2 places that we have identified aren't necessarily in the middle, just because they're not ideal, but they're on the outskirts. And no matter what, there will be a few hundred feet of forest, pretty dense forest that will be a buffer for it. Okay. So as soon as you kind of enter through the gateway, you'll be immersed in the woods, and hopefully, unless there's somebody who's just, testing explosives right across the street, we'll be able
Let's
to.
hope not. Hey, but you never know out here.
Right. We should be in a pretty good sanctuary.
Okay. So when are you going to be moving down?
That's a great question. Well, so I still have young children, and they're all in school. Well, my youngest is 9. And when I was asked to do this deal, I said, I want to stay in Omaha for as long as I can, because I need to stick around for my children, and I don't want them to move back and forth.
Right.
And I'm also divorced, and so I don't want to have to make my kids go back and forth too much. And so
that would be a lot.
For as long as I can, I'm going to work remotely. And a lot of my work can be done remotely. As I said, we need to get all of Texas involved in this. And so a lot of my job is going to be traveling around to multiple places in Texas and not only creating an opportunity for people to be a part of us from a fundraising perspective and a friend-raising perspective, but we want to partner with a lot of institutions because we are going to have a pretty major early Texas art component. And that requires me getting to know all of the folks around here who are great collectors and the museum and arts institutions that have great collections that are probably buried down in their archives and haven't seen the light of day.
There's got to be some good stuff out there.
There's. Yeah. I just heard a stat a couple of days ago that the average museum only has 3 to 4% of their inventory of their collection on display at any one time. Mm-hmm. And most of the work that they have down in there, let's say a good chunk of it, a third of it, almost never comes out. They keep it just for the sake of keeping it. It's an aspect of kind of having a deep archive. Mm-hmm. But almost nobody gets to see it except for researchers, folks who are really close to it.
And see, I would think that would just be because of space. They just don't have the space for it.
It's really just they might not have a reason to pull it out, or something might be a little bit too delicate, or just somebody hasn't thought of it. I mean, you wouldn't believe some of the catacombs of archives that are out there.
Yeah. Yeah, I know in downtown Houston, there's a lot of stuff down there that probably has not seen the light of day for a long, long time.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
So we get, I am hoping to be able to talk to some folks that can pull some of those resources and make it so that we can celebrate those early Texas artists and give them an opportunity to be involved with us, give us kind of that ethos of, we are celebrating all of Texas. And if we can, partner with some of these folks all around, that's going to be, I think, a huge boon to this community. Mm-hmm. It's going to be great for us, and it gives us relevance. It's not just the new things, finding the up and coming artist, the new next big name, but it's making it so that you shed light on what has been everything that has, come up to this point, right? Like, where did all of the inspired artists come from?
Wow.
So it's so that'll be my next few years is traveling around, doing lots of planning, learning,
mm-hmm.
Getting to know everybody.
Yeah. So on the external pieces, I'm concerned about maintenance. I don't know why this is coming up for me, but it is. I mean, are these items that need to be maintained, or do they just naturally patina? How does that normally work?
Yeah. So yes, the answer is yes to all of that. We do need, that's why I kind of mentioned that there might be a few buildings. The current plan is to have a few pretty significant size outbuildings that will be an archive storage space that will be very controlled from an atmospheric perspective. And then there will be a big workshop and a staging area that will allow us to be able to kind of pull things in and maintain them.
Wow.
A lot of James's work that he has dubbed outdoor worthy, he is not concerned with what the weather is going to do to them. If it gets a couple of dings or patina and things like that, that is a part of the artist's intention. Now, if a tree falls on it,
yeah, that's bad.
We got to pull it in and maintain it, fix it up. But for the most part, a lot of the kind of natural weathering is really a part of the process. Mm-hmm. He does use a lot of wood in his sculpture work, and anything that's outside would need a regular, probably yearly or semi-annual, kind of process of maybe putting more linseed oil or something like that on it.
Sure.
But for the most part, the outdoor sculptures, you kind of hope that they can take care of themselves, and maybe you just touch them up every once in a while. The internal stuff, it's the same way. If you store it correctly, it doesn't need a lot of maintenance. If you store it poorly, it needs a lot of maintenance. So it's really just planning ahead.
Okay, real good.
But it is something that I have to worry about all the time too. So
I'll bet.
I immediately said, well, I hope we get a good groundskeeper. I mean, it's just
yeah, it's going to be important stuff.
Yeah.
So what about interactive spaces? Do y'all have plans for, like, if you come and I don't think it's something you'd walk through and then just leave. It seems like it'd be something you'd want to stay throughout the day and maybe have places to have lunch
Yes.
or something like that.
Absolutely.
So are there interactive spaces involved in this?
Yeah. So one of my first concerns in driving out here is just recognizing that this is still a relatively rural area, which I hope it maintains a certain level of rural, kind of environment.
Sure.
But regardless of how far away it is from Houston, we need to think about this as a destination for anybody. And if they're going to take their time to come to our space, we don't want them to just maybe take 45 minutes to an hour to just kind of, like stroll through. Anybody who's not going to sit and appreciate the artwork and, sit at it and read the signs and everything, you can go through a museum relatively quickly if you don't really care to stop and appreciate it all. Part of the trick there is to make it so that you do have a way for people to want to linger. Now, that's not saying like you trap them, but, we do have one. I mean, it's great to have a cafe or a restaurant or something where people can refresh themselves. And two, there are going to be a lot of programs that I am hoping is built organically through the ideas through James and Charmaine, our board, but more importantly, through the community itself. For the next 5 years, we want to have a lot of different events that are essentially information gathering and idea gathering to say, okay, what are some programmatic ideas that we can do such that there's tours, classrooms, workshops. Those are built for local community. That's not necessarily somebody who flies in from out of the country or from any other state and walks into and says, oh, I'm going to sit down and have a class right now. That just doesn't happen. Usually those folks walk in, they see the art, they have a cup of coffee, maybe they visit the gift shop, and then they carry on. Now, we do have a significant amount of pathway, and so not just walking through the museum, but if you do decide to kind of like take it all in, that could take hours.
Sure.
But you need to have a lot of those thought processes in place such that if, let's say a field trip comes out, a busload of kids come out.
Awesome. That'd be great.
I mean, that was one of the first things that James and Charmaine said is, our vision is that we just have lines of buses coming up here all the time, and we just have droves of kids, wanting to learn, wanting to run around. I mean, they very much kind of got me right there with regards to like what I think is important to inspiring people. It's a welcoming attitude. It's not this do not touch, do not talk, do not don't even look too hard, don't get too close, right? They have a great attitude with regards to what they want this place to be. And, when they talk about kids being there, that means they have so much less fear of the interaction of the kids and the artwork and what is around that space. Now, James's pieces are very, very durable. Some of the early Texas artwork, we might have to have a couple of signs that say, don't touch this, but
please don't climb on this.
Right. Well, James, I can't remember the phrase that he used, but it had something to do with the attraction of nuisances. And there are certain ordinances in towns around here that don't allow public art that looks climbable. And James just goes, well, geez, my artwork looks like the best tree you could ever climb on.
It does. It actually does.
Yeah.
I even see that in me. The boy comes out in me on that.
Oh, same. Oh, my gosh. I look at some of his artwork and I say, I'd climb on that.
Yeah. And then have a picture taken. That'd be great.
Now, we obviously aren't going to try and encourage climbing on the artwork that's on display, but that does open up the thought process of, what do you do to sort of satisfy that urge, that natural urge that's going to come about with everybody? Like, do you build a playground? Do you make kind of natural landscapes that are just fun to like run and climb and roll on? And I think that all of that is a part of the long-term plan of like, how do you make this space enjoyable that is more than just what the art is?
Right. Yeah. Interactive spaces.
Right.
I love it. Yeah.
Right.
And the best part about this whole thing is in today's world, everybody has way too much screen time. And I think that generally real art is starting to get lost.
Yes.
You have AI now. I mean, I could go on the computer and create any kind of image I wanted to just by prompting.
Right. Draw me a picture of what I'm thinking of right now.
And it's just too much. And I think that a place to go, and I'm even thinking maybe y'all ought to geofence it and just make it an electronic free zone.
Yeah.
And just go and just
Put a Faraday cage around the whole place.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just immerse yourself in real art. It's just a blessing to mankind. It really is.
Yeah. We hope that it's going to be such an interesting space that people don't really remember that they have a phone in their pocket.
That would be awesome.
Unless they want to take a nice picture.
Yeah.
But look, both with the Kaneko and with this project and with a lot of other arts institutions, one of the biggest challenges is to make everybody realize that that creative spirit is in everybody. That creativity is not just sanctioned for people who can put it down on paper or build it into a sculpture. Mm-hmm. It's for musicians and it's for bankers. Anybody who is successful in their life had to have a creative mind to go along with it. Every invention, every comfort that we have in our life had to come from a very, very creative person.
Everything was a thought to start out with.
Right. And then you needed to figure out how to express yourself, right? The most important thing that anybody can do, especially now, like in this day and age, is to learn how to get an idea out of their brain and into the real world, how to learn how to express yourself. That sounds a little touchy-feely, but when you really talk to the folks who know how to run a business, who know how to make something happen, it is the communication of their idea.
Absolutely.
And I think that, to your point, it's not just real art. It is the idea that we don't have to figure out how to get those ideas communicated efficiently. But for a lot of reasons, because of AI, because of kind of automation in general, people almost need to go all the way back to the beginning to learn how to be real people, need to learn how to express themselves, communicate their thoughts. Whether AI is going to do it or not, you still need to be able to get those ideas out. If I were to take all of the kind of modern developments that are happening right now to its most optimistic end, it is going to make it so that humanity is really getting back down to needing to be real humans. Mm-hmm. James said this yesterday. Up in Colorado, there's a couple of organizations that host folks that is a pretty high level artist residency program, meaning you can kind of buy a spot or get invited to a spot where you go and you stay in a beautiful setting and you become an artist. And a lot of these folks are people who were CEOs of major companies who have kind of done everything in their lives. They have all the resources in the world. And what do they do now? They want to go back and they want to be what they really want to be. They want to be an artist. Right. They want to create. They want to express themselves. I hope that is the end product of having all of these really interesting comforts and resources here. Now, whether or not humanity decides to use the tools that way, it's hard to say. But we are one institution that is going to try and drive those decisions that way.
I mean, even if a portion of the people that visit it think to themselves, I could do something like that. I ought to give that a whirl.
Yeah.
That's worth it.
I actually love it when people walk up to a piece of artwork and they say, I could do that. I said, why don't you do it?
Yeah.
And they're like,
not as easy as it looks.
Right. That's right. That's right.
Yeah,
somebody had to do it 1,000 times before they made that one.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. So is there a website or anything right now that an individual can go to and take a look at the plans and what this is going to look like and maybe some better representations of what's going on? Do y'all have anything like that yet?
Yes, we do. So we have a website. It's Surls Locke Museum.org. It's SURLSLOCKE museum.org.
Link in the description. Okay.
And just as a caveat, we are a very young institution. It's still a relatively small website.
Okay.
There's just kind of the basics on there. But it will give people a little bit of insight into what this project is. But it also links out to these two artists, and they have a very prolific background, and so there's a lot of information buried in there if you dig around.
And James has a lot of pieces in Houston. As a matter of fact, I know there's one on Kirby Drive.
Oh, they're all over.
Yeah, so I mean, you can actually look that up and then take a drive.
That's right.
And spend a Saturday doing that, and that'll give you an idea of what we're going to have right here in Splendora.
Exactly.
This is going to beat it all, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, they can build a lot of stuff out here, but this is going to beat it all.
Yeah, we
You know?
are really excited to get the community involved with this, really get all of the folks who are planning this to plan around this.
Yeah.
We want this to be, a focal point. You think about business owners, why would they care that a museum's down the street? Well, if you're a big developer and you make hotels, you might care that there's a museum down the way.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
So we're excited for everybody to learn about this. I'm especially excited for the local community, for all the students, for the people who want to come in and say, I think I could do that, because I want to challenge everybody to be able to do that.
Yeah, and I'm with James. I can see busloads of young kids, even high school kids, even kids from the college coming down and checking it out. That'd be awesome.
We hope to have fellowships, internships, partnerships with all the universities around here. I mean, it's another great way of staying relevant, making sure that, the young up and coming artists, administrators, you name it. I mean, writers, poets, musicians, business folk. I mean, like, anybody can find a place at an establishment like this, even if you feel like you don't know anything about art. As I said, kind of creative thinking requires that anybody who wants to accomplish something major in their life, it requires them to admit to themselves that they have creative thought, that they are artists, that they are creative people. And the only way that they're going to get better, that they're going to be more successful in life, is to really admit that the creative process is the only way to get there.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I see so much for this. I'm really excited. 5 years can't come quick enough.
Oh, I know. It feels like a long time when you have to kind of do things day by day. But already 9 months for me is just shot by. Yeah. So I'm already feeling that time dilation of like, oh my gosh, it's slipping away. Yeah, we need to get this done.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you coming on the show. This has been a good conversation, and I'm even more excited than I was before.
Well, thank you, Hank.
Anything that I can do to help out, man, I will.
I appreciate you, and I'll take you up on that.
Okay, sounds good.
Well, thank you, Hank. I really appreciate you having me on.
No problem. All right, guys. Well, there you have it. We're going to have a beautiful museum right here in Splendora. I'm really excited about it, and I'd love to start a conversation about it. So if you guys want to comment, and we can take this thing to Facebook or whatever you want, that'd be great. I'm going to try to have these guys on a regular basis to give us updates and let us know where they're going with this, and we can watch it grow. It's already gone from 20 acres to 40. Who knows? Maybe next time it'll be 60. So we'll have to see. And plus, I'm thinking this is going to be a great place for older people to go, just to find some peace.
Oh, yes.
Because it's hard in life nowadays with all the hustle and bustle, just to be able to sit somewhere and listen to the birds and look at something beautiful and just find that inner peace.
We want this to be a sanctuary.
Providing that's amazing. So, all right, guys. Well, there you have it. I'm Hank Vatt. This is Hank's Think Tank, and we'll see you in the next one.
Thanks, Hank.